I did a thing, inspired by a thing. So there's a shot at the end of the Day of Black Sun episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender where we see Zuko following the gang as they're heading towards the Western Air Temple after the failed invasion. And I love that shot so much and wanted to try to recreate it to see if I could capture all the nuance and drama of the situation. Like, seriously, how is Zuko's head not exploding from everything that happened to him? Poor Zuko. So, taking a look at the original shot, we see his body facing towards the side of the war balloon, and his head is turned towards the front. He has one hand holding the side of the thingy, and the other holding the thingy. Yeah, I don't know war balloon jargon. His eyes seem to be looking downwards, which could be that he's looking at the group, or looking at the destination at the Western Air Temple, or maybe where to land, or just looking at nothing as his mind somehow comprehends the plethora of BS that he's been going through. Poor Zuko. But I digress. So here's my first attempt. Even as the obvious draft that it looks to be, like it's very sketchy, I do think that this one was the weakest of my attempts, and you'll see why soon. I was trying to figure out what to focus on in terms of pose and body language and facial expression. In this attempt, I ended up having his head and body facing the same direction and trying to focus more on his facial expression. At this point, once I had the general idea sketched out, I decided that I hated it and I yeeted it into the void. To try again, because, the first attempt isn't the only one we make. So, in the first attempt, I felt like I wasn't able to capture the drama in his posture so much, and I felt like my proportions were off and the expression was more fury rather than fierce determination that I was going for. So for the second attempt, I tried to focus on fixing those things and also to try to show more tension in his body, like in his muscles. In the first attempt, I had him facing forward for some reason, and this time I thought I'd get a head turn in. So I guess I ended up taking that literally, and I turned his head a bit instead of showing the head turn by rotating the body. Anyway, the second attempt came out a bit better than the first, I think. The expression was less fury, and I think the tension in his muscles showed through better this time, but it still wasn't where I wanted it to be, so I gave it another go. I was happier with the second pose. So I turned down the opacity and traced the general outline of the parts that I liked. And I still struggled a bit with the hair in the left arm, that is the arm on the right hand side of the screen. And the neck ended up a bit longer than intended. So I went in and fixed that up later and re exported the JPEG, but not the time lapse. I didn't think it was worth it. But ultimately, I was really happy with how this third attempt came out. So happy, in fact, that I put a million carts before a singular horse and decided to make a video. Yeah, this one. Talking about the shot from the show and sharing my thoughts about it and my attempts to recreate it.
Audio shift in the form of using a better microphone. Okay, I actually made one more definitely final attempt at this. So, getting the posture exactly how it was in my head was actually kind of a struggle. I have a lot of work to do in my art journey and a lot to learn and practice. And a few times, even in this fourth and definitely final attempt, you'll see that I added a new layer and tried figuring out the pose again and again. Thankfully, I didn't scrap the first of this fourth and definitely final attempt. Ultimately, I pushed through and continued with the sketch. I wanted a version that felt fully finished, so I added as many details of the war balloon as I could comprehend. Stuff like the boat shaped carrier part that Zuko's standing in, the wires connecting the boat to the balloon part, and the steel fire pit thing that sends the heat into the balloon. It's useful to know what function a part holds when you attempt to recreate a drawing of it. You could say that to learn is to understand. Haha, wisdom or something. When I was content with the sketch, I got to inking it. And inking was pretty uneventful. The sketch was more or less where I wanted it to be, so inking was just another part of the process of finishing this as a project. And of course, after inking, I colored it in, this time going for colors that were more accurate to the original and then shading it in. I don't fully understand lighting and shading just yet. That's something that I'm still trying to practice. So for this, I tried to follow the original as much as I could. This was my first adventure with cell shading, too. And while I didn't know too much about how the lights and shadows works, following the reference really helped. And it was fun to see the picture really come to life when the light parts were added in. Kind of felt like the picture had a glow to it. So here it is, the final version of the shot of Zuko. I really enjoyed doing this, drawing multiple attempts and talking about it, looking at the details and seeing what I can learn, and getting the chance to practice. And I like looking at the attempts side by side, especially the most recent ones, number 3 and 4. I'm really happy with how both of these came out. So, video conclusion time. Thank you for joining me on this random as heck adventure. This is my first foray into video editing, and it seems I'm actually going to share it too. Which honestly is kind of hilarious, given that I had intended to make an introduction video for my channel before anything else. I do have the beginnings of a script for that, but honestly, not much else. In that video, I want to introduce myself in a few ways. Who am I? What are my goals for this channel? What's my art journey been like? And possibly a schedule. And whatever else comes to mind. I've digressed from the point of this video, and it's getting really long, so I'll just end it here, and we'll see where this goes from here.